Lydia, how could Stephen do this to us? He's gambled away our savings. Esther's voice cracked with shock as she waved the bank statement in front of my face. I stared at the numbers, unable to comprehend the depth of my husband's betrayal. Our hard-earned retirement fund, the nest egg we'd carefully built over decades of sacrifice, had vanished into the abyss of his addiction. Esther's accusatory glare bore into me, as if I were somehow responsible for her son's reckless behavior. I swallowed hard, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill. I had no idea, I stammered, my hands trembling. He never told me anything. Esther scoffed, her lips curling into a sneer. Of course he didn't. You're too busy with your little hobbies to notice what's happening in your own home. Her words stung, but I knew better than to engage in her toxic games. Stephen had always been her golden child, capable of no wrong in her eyes. As if on cue, my husband shuffled into the kitchen, his eyes downcast and his shoulders slumped. He reeked of stale cigarettes and cheap whiskey, a far cry from the sharp-dressed professional he once was. Mom, Lydia? I'm sorry, he mumbled, his voice barely audible. I got in too deep and I couldn't stop. Esther rounded on him, her fury palpable. You foolish boy, how could you do this to your family? Your wife and children deserve better than a deadbeat gambler. Stephen flinched, shrinking under his mother's wrath. I wanted to defend him, to remind Esther that he was a grown man, not the little boy she still saw him as, but the words died on my lips, choked by the weight of his betrayal. In that moment, I realized the true gravity of our situation. With our savings gone, we would be forced to rely on Esther's meager pension and my modest retirement income. The comfortable life we had built for ourselves was crumbling before our eyes. Esther turned to me, her eyes narrowed. You'll have to take me in, Lydia. I can't afford to live on my own anymore. I opened my mouth to protest, but the words never came. What choice did I have? Stephen had squandered our financial security, and his mother was now our responsibility. As I nodded my reluctant agreement, I couldn't help but feel the invisible chains of obligation tightening around me. Our once peaceful suburban home was about to become a battleground, and I feared I was ill-equipped for the war that lay ahead. Lydia, this food is awful. You never had any sense of taste, Esther complained, pushing the plate away with a look of disgust. I bit my tongue, fighting back the urge to defend my cooking. It was a losing battle, one I'd learned long ago not to engage in. Esther had always been critical, her sharp tongue a weapon she wielded with precision. Stephen, as usual, remained silent, his eyes fixed on his plate as he mechanically shoveled food into his mouth. He had long since given up trying to mediate the constant tension between his mother and me. Adam and Leah exchanged uncomfortable glances, caught in the crossfire of our dysfunctional family dynamic. I felt a pang of guilt, knowing that their childhood memories were tainted by scenes like this, played out over and over again. Grandma, the food is delicious, Leah offered, her voice gentle but strained. Mom worked hard on this meal, Esther scoffed, waving her hand dismissively. You're too kind, dear. Your mother has never been much of a cook. Adam shifted in his seat, his brow furrowed. Mom, maybe you should listen to Grandma's advice. She knows what she's talking about. I felt the familiar sting of his words, a reminder that even my own son had been swayed by Esther's manipulative ways. She had a knack for turning family members against one another, sowing seeds of doubt and discontent. As the meal dragged on, the tension in the air grew thicker, suffocating me with each passing minute. I longed for the days when our family gatherings had been filled with laughter and warmth, before Esther's presence had cast a dark shadow over our home. After what felt like an eternity, the dishes were cleared, and Esther retreated to her room, leaving a trail of criticism in her wake. Stephen, as always, followed dutifully, his loyalty to his mother unwavering. I sank onto the couch, exhausted by the constant battle to maintain a semblance of normalcy. Adam and Leah hovered nearby, their expressions a mix of pity and frustration. Mom, you shouldn't let her get to you like that, Leah said softly, taking a seat beside me. Grandma is just, well, you know how she is. I forced a smile, but it felt hollow. I know, dear. It's just, sometimes it feels like she's slowly chipping away at me, piece by piece. Adam shook his head, his jaw set in a familiar stubborn line. You're too sensitive, Mom. Grandma's just trying to help in her own way. I wanted to argue, to make him see the truth about Esther's manipulative behavior, but I knew it would be futile. He was too deeply entrenched in her web of lies and deceit. As I watched my children leave, each carrying their own burdens of family drama, I couldn't help but feel a sense of hopelessness. Esther's grip on our lives seemed unbreakable, and I feared that the fractures within our family would only continue to widen. "Mom, you've always been so stubborn. You should listen to Grandma," Adam lectured me coldly, his arms folded across his chest. I felt a familiar pang in my heart as my own son sided with Esther, his grandmother's poisonous words seeping into his mind like a slow-acting venom. It was a scene that had played out countless times, but the sting never dulled. Beside him, Rebecca nodded in agreement, her lips curved into a smug smile. She had quickly become Esther's ally, feeding into the toxic dynamic that had taken root in our home. "Adam, please," I pleaded, my voice strained. "Can't you see what she's doing? She's trying to turn us against each other." He scoffed, shaking his head dismissively. "You're just being paranoid, Mom. Grandma only wants what's best for us." I wanted to scream, to shake him until he saw the truth, but I knew it would be futile. Esther had sunk her claws into him long ago, and her grip was unrelenting. Stephen, as always, remained silent, his eyes downcast as he retreated to the shadows of our crumbling marriage. He had long since abdicated his role as a husband and father, content to let Esther dictate the course of our lives. Leah, my sweet, sensitive daughter, watched the exchange with a pained expression. She had always been caught in the crossfire, torn between her loyalty to her family and her desire for peace. "Mom, Dad, please," she implored, her voice trembling. "Can't we just get along? Tom and I are getting married soon, and I don't want this drama to overshadow our special day." I felt a surge of guilt, knowing that my daughter's happiness was being tainted by the toxic environment we had created. She deserved better, a loving family to support her as she embarked on this new chapter of her life. But Esther was having none of it. "Don't be ridiculous, Leah," she snapped. "Your mother is the one causing all the problems. If she would just listen to me, everything would be fine." I clenched my fists, biting back the retort that burned on my tongue. Esther thrived on conflict, reveling in the chaos she sowed within our family. As the argument escalated, I felt myself retreating inward, a protective shell forming around my battered heart. I had always prided myself on being a strong, capable woman, but Esther's relentless attacks had slowly chipped away at my confidence, leaving me doubting my worth as a wife and mother. In that moment, a seed of defiance took root within me. I couldn't continue living like this, trapped in a cycle of toxicity and abuse. Something had to change, and I knew it would have to start with me. As my family dispersed, each retreating to their respective corners, I made a silent vow. I would find a way to regain control of my life, to break free from Esther's suffocating grip. It was a daunting task, but I was determined to succeed, no matter the cost. "Lydia, why are you working? Are you up to something no good?" Rebecca asked, her voice dripping with false concern as she leaned against the kitchen counter. I fought back the urge to roll my eyes, knowing that any reaction would only fuel her twisted games. Esther's influence had seeped into her like a poisonous venom, turning my once pleasant daughter-in-law into a master of subtle manipulation. "I'm just trying to keep busy," I replied, forcing a tight smile. "It gets a little lonely around here during the day." Rebecca's lips curved into a sickly sweet smile, her eyes glinting with malice. "Well, we wouldn't want you getting into any trouble, would we? A woman your age, working with all those young people, who knows what kind of ideas they might put in your head?" The implication hung heavy in the air, a thinly veiled accusation of infidelity. I felt my cheeks flush with anger, but I refused to take the bait. Esther and Rebecca thrived on conflict, and I was determined not to give them the satisfaction. "I appreciate your concern, Rebecca," I said evenly, "but I can assure you my intentions are pure. I'm simply trying to make the most of my retirement years." Her smile faltered for a moment, and I saw a flicker of frustration cross her features. She had expected me to lash out, to play into her twisted narrative, but I had learned to control my emotions, to deny her the drama she so desperately craved. As if on cue, Esther shuffled into the kitchen, her eyes narrowed with suspicion. "What's going on in here?" she demanded, her gaze darting between us. Rebecca quickly recovered, her mask of concern slipping back into place. I was just asking Lydia about her new job, she said innocently. I'm a little worried about her, that's all. Esther's lips curled into a sneer as she turned her attention to me. A job? At your age? What could you possibly need to work for? I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the onslaught. It's just a part-time position at the community center, I explained calmly. It gives me something to do during the day, and a little extra income never hurts. Esther scoffed, her eyes boring into me with contempt. Extra income? Don't be ridiculous. We both know Stephen's gambling has left us in a precarious financial situation. You're up to something, Lydia, and I intend to find out what it is. I opened my mouth to protest, but the words died on my lips. What was the point? Esther had already made up her mind, and no amount of reasoning would sway her. She was determined to paint me as the villain, the one responsible for the fractures that had torn our family apart. As Esther and Rebecca continued to whisper and speculate, their voices a constant buzz in my ear, I felt a familiar sense of isolation creep over me. Stephen, as always, was nowhere to be found, content to let his mother and wife wage their war of words without him. In that moment, I realized that the only person I could truly rely on was myself. If I wanted to preserve what little dignity I had left, I would have to find a way to rise above the toxicity that had engulfed our home. Leah's voice broke through my thoughts, a welcome reprieve from the chaos. Mom, can we talk for a minute? I nodded gratefully, eager to escape the suffocating atmosphere of the kitchen. As we retreated to the privacy of the living room, I felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps, in my daughter's understanding and support, I would find the strength to weather this storm. I need to tell you something, Mom. Dad's been seeing another woman, Leah blurted out, her eyes brimming with tears. The words hit me like a physical blow, knocking the wind out of me. I stared at my daughter, unable to process what she had just revealed. Stephen, my husband of nearly 4 decades, had been unfaithful. Are you sure? I managed to choke out, my voice barely above a whisper. Leah nodded, her lips pressed into a tight line. Tom's friend saw them together at a restaurant last week. They were holding hands and acting like a couple. A wave of nausea washed over me as the reality of Stephen's betrayal sank in. All those nights he had claimed to be working late, all the excuses and lies, they had been a smokescreen to cover up his affair. Anger bubbled up inside me, a white-hot fury that threatened to consume me. How could he do this to our family? To me? After everything we had been through, after all the sacrifices I had made to keep our household afloat in the wake of his gambling addiction, this was how he repaid me. That bastard, I hissed, clenching my fists. I'll kill him. Leah's eyes widened, and she reached out to grasp my hand. Mom, please, don't do anything rash. We need to handle this carefully. I took a deep breath, trying to rein in my emotions. Leah was right, as much as it pained me to admit it. Confronting Stephen in a blind rage would only give him the upper hand, allowing him to play the victim as he so often did. You're right, I conceded, my voice steadier now. We need to be smart about this. Leah nodded, her expression grim. I'm so sorry, Mom. I know how much this must hurt. I forced a weak smile, touched by her concern. It's not your fault, sweetheart. Your father made his choices, and now he'll have to face the consequences. As Leah left to rejoin her fiancé, I felt a newfound sense of determination coursing through my veins. Stephen had crossed a line, and this time there would be no forgiveness, no second chances. He had shattered the fragile trust that had held our family together, and for that he would pay dearly. I paced the living room, my mind racing with possibilities. I could confront him, demand a divorce, and take him for every penny he had left. Or perhaps a more subtle approach was called for, a slow and methodical dismantling of his life until he was left with nothing but the ashes of his own making. As I mulled over my options, a familiar voice broke through my thoughts. Lydia, what's going on? You look like you've seen a ghost. I turned to find Esther regarding me with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. Of course, she would be the last to know about Stephen's indiscretions. Her precious son could do no wrong in her eyes. A wicked smile curved my lips as a plan began to take shape. If Esther wanted to remain blissfully ignorant of her son's failings, so be it. But she would soon learn that her blind loyalty had consequences, and I would be the one to deliver that harsh lesson. "Nothing's wrong, Esther," I replied smoothly. "In fact, everything is about to change for the better." "I'm leaving you, Stephen. I refuse to live in this misery any longer," I declared, thrusting a packed suitcase into his hands. Stephen blinked at me, his expression a mixture of confusion and disbelief. "What are you talking about, Lydia? Where are you going?" "Away from you," I spat, my voice trembling with barely contained rage. "Away from this toxic household and your constant betrayal." Realization dawned on his face, and he had the decency to look ashamed, if only for a moment. "Leah told you about the affair, didn't she?" I nodded, my jaw clenched. "How could you, Stephen? After everything we've been through, how could you do this to our family?" He shrugged, his eyes cold and devoid of remorse. "It just happened, Lydia. You know how things have been between us lately. I needed someone to make me feel alive again." I recoiled as if he had struck me, his callous words cutting deeper than any physical blow. In that moment, I saw him for what he truly was, a selfish, weak man who had sacrificed his integrity and our marriage on the altar of his own desires. "You disgust me," I hissed, my hands balling into fists at my sides. "Get out of my sight before I do something I'll regret." Stephen opened his mouth as if to protest, but the sound of footsteps in the hallway cut him off. Esther appeared, her eyes narrowed with suspicion. "What's going on here?" she demanded, her gaze flickering between us. "Lydia, why are you packing Stephen's things?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the inevitable confrontation. "I'm leaving, Esther. Your precious son has been having an affair, and I won't stand for it any longer." Esther's eyes widened, and she turned to Stephen, her expression a mixture of disbelief and fury. "Is this true? Have you been unfaithful to your wife?" Stephen shifted uncomfortably, unable to meet his mother's piercing gaze. "It's complicated, Mom. Things haven't been right between us for a long time." "That's no excuse," Esther thundered, her face flushed with anger. "How dare you bring such shame upon this family?" I watched the exchange with a sense of grim satisfaction, reveling in the sight of Esther's world crumbling around her. For once, her beloved son was the target of her wrath, and I couldn't help but feel a twisted sense of vindication. As Esther continued to berate Stephen, her words laced with venom, I slipped out of the room, leaving them to their bitter recriminations. It was time for me to start anew, to forge a life free from the toxicity that had plagued me for far too long. With a newfound sense of purpose, I gathered what few belongings I needed and made my way to the front door. As I stepped outside, the warm evening air caressed my face, and I inhaled deeply, savoring the taste of freedom. In that moment, I knew that the road ahead would be far from easy. Esther and Stephen would undoubtedly try to claw their way back into my life, using every manipulation tactic at their disposal. But I was ready for them, my resolve hardened by years of enduring their cruelty. As I walked away from the house that had once been my home, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The invisible chains that had bound me for so long had finally been broken, and I was free to chart my own course, unencumbered by the burdens of the past. "Mom, Grandma can't handle it. She's asking for you," Adam's voice pleaded weakly over the phone. I couldn't help but smile at the irony of the situation. Esther, the woman who had made my life a living hell for so long, was now desperate for my help. The tables had truly turned. "Is she now?" I replied, keeping my tone even. "And why should I come back to that toxic environment?" There was a pause on the other end of the line, and I could almost picture Adam squirming uncomfortably. "Look, Mom, I know things have been rough, but Grandma is really struggling without you. She can't keep up with the household chores, and Dad is useless." I felt a twinge of satisfaction at the thought of Esther's carefully constructed world crumbling around her. For years, she had lorded over our family, wielding her power like a weapon. Now, she was finally getting a taste of her own medicine. "I'm sorry, Adam, but I can't just come running back at her beck and call," I said firmly. "Your grandmother has made my life miserable for far too long. If she wants my help, she'll have to agree to my terms." Another pause, this one longer. I could sense Adam's hesitation, his loyalty to Esther, warring with his desperation for a solution. "What kind of terms?" he finally asked, his voice tinged with resignation. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation to come. First and foremost, Esther needs to acknowledge her behavior and apologize for the way she's treated me all these years. No more manipulation, no more cruelty. Adam scoffed, and I could picture the skeptical look on his face. You know Grandma, Mom. She'll never admit she was wrong. Then I guess she'll have to learn to fend for herself, I replied, my tone brooking no argument. I'm done being her punching bag. There was a long silence, and for a moment I thought Adam had hung up. But then, his voice crackled through the line once more. Okay, Mom, I'll talk to her and see what I can do, but I can't make any promises. That's all I ask, I said, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. The first step had been taken, the gauntlet thrown down. Now it was up to Esther to decide how far she was willing to go to regain my cooperation. As I ended the call, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in my newfound strength. For too long, I had allowed Esther to dictate the terms of my life, to strip me of my dignity and self-worth. But no more. This was my chance to reclaim what was rightfully mine, and I wasn't about to let it slip through my fingers. Over the next few days, I waited patiently for Adam's response, steeling myself for the inevitable backlash from Esther. She was a proud woman, and admitting her wrongdoing would be a bitter pill to swallow. But as the days turned into weeks and still no word came, I began to realize the true extent of Esther's stubbornness. She would rather suffer in her own misery than swallow her pride and seek my help. It was then that I knew my true revenge had begun. By refusing to play by Esther's rules, by denying her the control she so desperately craved, I was slowly but surely dismantling the very foundation of her power. And as Leah's bond with me grew stronger, her eyes opening to the truth of her grandmother's manipulations, I knew that my victory was all but assured. The tide had turned, and Esther's reign of terror was coming to an end, one painful step at a time. I've decided to live with Mom. She needs me, and I need her, Leah announced, her voice resolute as she began packing her belongings. I watched in stunned silence as my daughter methodically sorted through her things, separating the essentials from the clutter that had accumulated over the years. Her movements were purposeful, her expression one of steely determination. Are you sure about this, sweetheart? I asked, unable to keep the tremor of hope from my voice. Your grandmother won't make it easy for you. Leah paused, her gaze meeting mine with a newfound strength that took my breath away. I'm sure, Mom. After everything that's happened, I can't stay in that toxic environment any longer. It's time I stood up for myself. And for you. A lump formed in my throat as I pulled her into a fierce embrace, overwhelmed by a surge of pride and love. My daughter, once so conflicted and torn by the family drama, had finally found her voice, her inner strength. As we held each other, I couldn't help but think back to the dark days when Esther's grip on our lives had seemed unbreakable. Her manipulation had seeped into every corner of our existence, poisoning our relationships and robbing us of our dignity. But now the tide had turned. With Leah by my side, a united front against the forces that had sought to tear us apart, I felt a renewed sense of hope blossoming within me. Over the next few days, we settled into our new living arrangement, creating a sanctuary of peace and love in the midst of the chaos that had once consumed us. Leah's presence was a balm to my weary soul, a reminder that even in the darkest of times there was light to be found. And as we spent more time together, sharing our stories and supporting one another, I began to see the cracks forming in Esther's carefully constructed facade. Her hold on Adam, once so ironclad, was slowly but surely loosening. It started with small things, a missed phone call, a canceled dinner plan. But soon, the signs became more pronounced. Adam would show up at our door, his expression one of bewilderment and uncertainty, as if he were finally seeing the truth that had been hidden from him for so long. Mom, Grandma is different, he confided in me one evening, his brow furrowed in confusion. She's not the same person I thought she was. I nodded, understanding dawning in my heart. Esther's power had always been rooted in her ability to manipulate, to twist the truth to suit her own agenda. But with Leah and me standing firm, refusing to play her games, that power was slowly slipping away. As the weeks passed, the distance between Adam and his grandmother grew wider, a chasm of disillusionment that even Rebecca's subtle machinations couldn't bridge. And with each passing day, Stephen's life seemed to unravel further. His once proud demeanor, crumbling under the weight of his own failures. It was a bittersweet victory, to be sure. Part of me still loved the man I had once pledged my life to, the father of my children. But his actions had set in motion a chain of events that had nearly destroyed us all, and for that there could be no forgiveness. As I watched Leah blossom in our newfound sanctuary, her smile radiant and her spirit soaring, I knew that I had made the right choice. Our family had been fractured, broken by the toxic influences that had wormed their way into our lives. But now we were on the path to healing, to reclaiming the love and respect that had once bound us together. And as for Esther and Stephen, their fate was sealed. They had sown the seeds of their own destruction, and now they would reap the bitter harvest of their actions. For in the end, love and truth would always triumph over manipulation and deceit. The phone rings, jolting me out of my thoughts. I glance at the caller ID and freeze. It's Sadie, my daughter-in-law. My stomach twists into knots as I hesitate, my finger hovering over the answer button. Why would she be calling me out of the blue like this? We've barely spoken since the falling out with my son Jack. I take a deep breath and answer, trying to keep my voice steady. Hello? Meredith, hi. Sadie's overly cheerful voice grates on my nerves. I'm so glad I caught you. Listen, Jack and I were hoping you could come over for dinner tonight. We have something special planned. I frown, immediately suspicious. Dinner? Tonight? Isn't this a bit last minute? I know, I'm sorry, Sadie gushes. It's just that we have some exciting news to share, and we really want you to be a part of it. Please say you'll come. I hesitate, my mind racing. It's been months since I've seen my granddaughter, Avery. Not since I confronted Sadie about the bruises I found on Avery's arms. Bruises I'm convinced Sadie caused. But when I reported my suspicions, Sadie twisted everything around, making me look like a mentally unstable grandmother. The authorities found no proof. In the end, Jack believed his manipulative wife's lies over his own mother's concerns. The painful memories flashed through my mind. Marrying my college sweetheart Tom, the love of my life. Raising our twin boys Jack and Liam, the lights of our lives. Becoming a young widow far too soon when a drunk driver stole Tom away. Pouring my grief into building a successful catering business to support my sons. The joy of becoming a grandmother when Jack and his new wife Sadie had little Avery. And then the mounting dread as my instincts screamed that something was wrong. The way Avery flinched from Sadie's touch, the mysterious injuries Sadie couldn't explain. My world crumbling as everyone turned against me for trying to protect my granddaughter. Meredith, are you still there? Sadie's insistent voice snaps me back to the present. I close my eyes briefly, steeling myself. As much as it pains me, I can't pass up this chance to see Avery. To make sure she's okay, even if I have to play nice with Sadie to do it. Yes, I'm here, I reply, forcing a neutral tone. Dinner sounds lovely. What time should I be there? After noting down the details and ending the call, I lean back in my chair, my heart heavy. I have a bad feeling about this sudden invitation. In my bones, I know Sadie is up to something. I just pray that whatever it is won't put Avery in harm's way again. Determined to get to the bottom of this, I grab my purse and keys. If Sadie thinks she can fool me twice, she's got another thing coming. This time, I'll be ready for her games. This time, I won't let her hurt the ones I love most. Not again, not ever. It's been 3 months since that uncomfortable dinner at Jack and Sadie's house. 3 months of walking on eggshells, trying to maintain a relationship with my granddaughter Avery while tiptoeing around Sadie's mercurial moods. I've been watching her like a hawk, but Sadie's a master at putting on a show when others are around. Today, Sadie called me in a panic, begging me to watch Avery while she runs off to yet another last-minute audition. She's been chasing her failed acting dreams for years, constantly leaving Avery in my care with barely a moment's notice. I don't mind spending time with my granddaughter, but I worry about the instability Sadie brings to her life. When I arrive at their house, Sadie practically shoves Avery into my arms, already halfway out the door. Thanks so much, Meredith. You're a lifesaver. She calls over her shoulder before peeling out of the driveway. I sigh and look down at Avery, who clings to me tightly. My heart clenches as I notice a fresh bruise peeking out from under her sleeve. Gently, I pull back the fabric to get a better look. Avery, sweetie, how did you get this owie? I ask, keeping my voice soft and non-threatening. Avery's eyes fill with tears. I fell down. The rehearsed response sets off alarm bells in my head. Kneeling down to Avery's level, I take her tiny hands in mine. Avery, you know you can tell Grandma Murmur anything, right? I'm here to keep you safe. Avery hesitates, glancing around fearfully as if Sadie might pop out any second. Then in a whisper she confesses, Mommy gets mad sometimes. She grabs my arm too hard. White-hot rage courses through my veins, but I force myself to stay calm for Avery's sake. Thank you for telling me the truth, brave girl. I won't let Mommy hurt you anymore. That evening, I confront Sadie the moment she returns. I lay out the evidence of Avery's injuries and repeat what Avery told me. But Sadie just laughs in my face. You're being paranoid, Meredith. Avery's a clumsy child, and you know how kids exaggerate, she scoffs, rolling her eyes. I know what I saw, Sadie. If you ever lay a hand on Avery again, I swear I'll... Sadie cuts me off, her eyes flashing with malice. You'll what? Who do you think Jack will believe? His devoted wife or his crazy old mother? I can ruin you, Meredith. I can make sure you never see Avery again. Her words knock the wind out of me. I know she's capable of following through on her threats. I've seen how she's wrapped Jack around her finger, poisoning him against me. In a last-ditch effort, I call Child Services to report Sadie's abuse. But just as Sadie predicted, they find no concrete proof. It's my word against hers. And when Jack finds out about the investigation, he's furious. How could you accuse Sadie of something so horrible? She's an amazing mother, he shouts, pacing angrily in front of me. Jack, please, I'm telling you the truth. Sadie is not who you think she is, I plead, desperate for him to see reason. But Sadie has already gotten to him. No, Mom, Sadie's right. You're unhinged. You need help. The betrayal cuts deep. My own son, siding with his abusive wife over his own mother. I can hardly breathe through the pain. In the end, Sadie makes good on her threats. She slaps me with a restraining order, banning me from seeing Avery. Jack cuts me out of his life completely, believing Sadie's lies about my supposed mental instability. Alone in my house, I crumple to the floor, my heart shattered beyond repair. How did it come to this? How did I let Sadie destroy my family? But even as despair threatens to swallow me whole, a flicker of determination sparks to life in my chest. I won't let Sadie win. I won't let her corrupt my granddaughter. Somehow, some way, I will find a way to expose her true colors and save Avery, no matter the cost. Months drag by, each day a painful reminder of the gaping hole in my heart where Avery used to be. The restraining order Sadie slapped me with keeps me away from my granddaughter, and Jack refuses to take my calls. I feel like I'm drowning in a sea of helplessness and despair, but even in my darkest moments, I refuse to give up. I hire a private investigator to dig into Sadie's past, desperate for any shred of evidence that might expose her true nature. What the PI uncovers makes my blood run cold. Sadie, it turns out, has a history of latching on to wealthy men, bleeding them dry, and then moving on to her next target. She's left a trail of broken hearts and empty bank accounts in her wake, and now she's set her sights on my son. Armed with this new information, I confront Liam, Jack's twin brother. I know he's always had a soft spot for Sadie, but surely he can't condone her behavior. Liam, please, you have to help me. Sadie is bad news. She's hurting Avery and using Jack for his money, I plead, showing him the evidence the PI gathered. Liam shifts uncomfortably, avoiding my gaze. I don't know, Mom. Sadie's always been good to me. Maybe you're just overreacting. Frustration boils up inside me. Open your eyes, Liam. She's manipulating you, just like she's manipulating Jack. Can't you see that? But Liam just shakes his head, backing away. I'm sorry, Mom. I can't get involved. This is between you and Sadie. I watch him walk away, my heart sinking. Even my own flesh and blood won't stand up for what's right. Desperate, I turn to Jack, hoping that the proof of Sadie's financial infidelity will be enough to snap him out of her spell. I corner him at his office, laying out the documents that show Sadie has been siphoning money from his company to fund her lavish lifestyle. Jack's face hardens as he flips through the papers. For a moment, I think I've finally gotten through to him. But then Sadie bursts in, crocodile tears streaming down her face. Jack, baby, don't listen to her. She's crazy, remember? She's just trying to tear us apart. Sadie wails, clinging to Jack's arm. Jack hesitates, glancing between me and Sadie. I hold my breath, praying he'll finally see the truth. But Sadie's hold on him is too strong. Jack's expression turns to one of disgust as he throws the documents back at me. Enough, Mom. I'm sick of your lies and manipulations. Sadie is my wife, and I trust her completely. I want you out of my life, for good this time. His words hit me like a physical blow. I stumble back, my vision blurring with tears. Jack, please, I'm just trying to protect you. To protect Avery, I whisper, my voice cracking. But Jack is already turning away, his arm around Sadie's shoulders. Stay away from my family, Mom. I mean it. You're dead to me. The world tilts on its axis as I watch my son walk away, choosing his abuser over his own mother. The pain is too much to bear. I clutch at my chest, gasping for air as a searing agony rips through me. The last thing I remember before everything goes black is the sound of Sadie's mocking laughter echoing in my ears. I wake up in a hospital bed, hooked up to beeping machines. The doctors tell me I suffered a severe heart attack brought on by stress and emotional trauma. They urge me to rest, to avoid any further upsets. But how can I rest when my granddaughter is still in danger, when my own sons have turned their backs on me? Staring at the sterile white ceiling, I make a vow to myself. No matter what it takes, no matter how long, I will find a way to save Avery and expose Sadie for the monster she truly is, even if it destroys me in the process. A year has passed since my heart attack, a year of painful isolation and unanswered questions. Jack and Liam remain stubbornly out of reach, and every attempt to contact Avery is met with stony silence. The ache in my chest has nothing to do with my physical health and everything to do with the gaping hole where my family used to be. So when Sadie shows up on my doorstep one rainy evening, bruised and sobbing, I'm equal parts shocked and wary. She collapses into my arms, her body shaking with tremors. Meredith, please, you have to help me. Jack, he's out of control. He's been hitting me, and I'm afraid he's going to hurt Avery next. She gasps out between hiccuping breaths. I stiffen, my mind reeling. Could I have been wrong all this time? Could Jack, my gentle, loving son, truly be capable of such violence? I didn't know where else to go. I'm so sorry for everything, for turning Jack against you. I was just scared, Sadie whimpers, clinging to me like a lifeline. Against my better judgment, I find myself softening. The bruises on her face and arms look all too real, and the terror in her eyes is palpable. Shh, it's okay. You're safe now, I murmur, guiding her into the house. Over the next few days, as Sadie hides out in my guest room, she spins a tale of horror and abuse that makes my stomach churn. She describes how Jack flew into a rage when she confronted him about his drinking, how he slammed her against the wall and choked her until she blacked out. She shows me the finger-shaped bruises on her throat, the cigarette burns on her thighs. He said he'd kill me if I ever left him, Meredith. He said he'd make sure I never saw Avery again, Sadie confesses, her voice hollow with despair. But doubt gnaws at me, warring with the instinct to protect. I think back to all the times I suspected Sadie of hurting Avery, of manipulating Jack. Could I have misjudged her so badly? Sadie seems to sense my hesitation. She takes my hands in hers, her eyes shimmering with tears. I know I've given you every reason not to trust me, Meredith, but I swear I'm telling you the truth. Jack is a monster, and Avery and I need your help to escape him. Looking into her pleading face, I make a decision. I can't turn my back on her, not if there's even a chance that Avery is in danger. Over the next few weeks, as Sadie and I grow closer, I start to question everything I thought I knew. She's so different from the cold, calculating woman I once believed her to be. She's vulnerable, broken, desperate for a mother's love and guidance. I find myself opening up to her, sharing stories of Jack and Liam's childhood, of my own struggles as a young widow. Sadie listens intently, offering comfort and understanding in return. For the first time in longer than I can remember, I don't feel so alone. But even as I start to let my guard down, nagging doubts persist. Something about Sadie's story doesn't quite add up. The way she flinches at odd moments, the inconsistencies in her timeline. I try to push my suspicions aside, telling myself I'm just being paranoid. Until the day I accidentally overhear a phone call that shatters everything. Sadie is in the guest room, the door cracked open, just a sliver. Her voice floats out, low and urgent. I can't keep this up much longer, Liam. She's starting to ask too many questions. We need to move forward with the plan before she figures out what's really going on. Ice floods my veins as the truth hits me like a sledgehammer. Sadie hasn't changed at all. She's been playing me for a fool, just like she played Jack. And now she's plotting with my own son to destroy what's left of my family. Betrayal tastes like ashes in my mouth as I confront the ugly truth. Sadie, the woman I've opened my home and heart to, is nothing more than a viper in sheep's clothing. The bruises, the tears, the tales of abuse, all a carefully crafted lie to manipulate me. I think back to all the inconsistencies in her story, the nagging doubts I pushed aside in my desperation to believe her. How could I have been so blind? Determined to uncover the full extent of her deception, I wait until Sadie leaves for one of her mysterious errands and slip into the guest room. It doesn't take long to find what I'm looking for, a small memory card tucked inside her jewelry box. With shaking hands, I insert the card into my laptop. The screen fills with video after damning video of Sadie coaching Avery, my sweet, innocent granddaughter, to lie. Remember, Avery, when Grandma asks about the bruises, you say Daddy did it. You say he hits you and Mommy, okay? Sadie's sickly sweet voice makes my stomach turn. Avery, her eyes wide and confused, nods obediently. Daddy hits me and Mommy. Bile rises in my throat as the truth sinks in. Sadie has been orchestrating this whole charade, using her own daughter as a pawn in her twisted game, and I fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. I'm so engrossed in the horrifying footage that I don't hear Sadie return until it's too late. She bursts into the room, her face twisting with rage when she sees what I'm watching. You nosy bitch, you just couldn't leave well enough alone, could you? She snarls, lunging for the laptop. I jerk it out of her reach, my own anger boiling over. How could you, Sadie? How could you use your own child like this? Avery deserves so much better than a mother like you. Sadie throws her head back and laughs, the sound chilling me to the bone. Oh, spare me the righteous indignation, Meredith. You're just as pathetic as the rest of them, so desperate for love, for family, that you'll believe anything I say. She stalks closer, her eyes glittering with malice. You want to know the truth? Fine. I never loved Jack. I never loved Avery. They were just means to an end, a way to get what I wanted. I recoil in horror, my heart breaking for my son, for my granddaughter. And what is it you want, Sadie? Money? Power? Sadie smirks, her lips curling into a cruel sneer. All of the above, and more. I want to destroy you, Meredith. I want to take everything you love and burn it to the ground, just like you tried to do to me. The pieces click into place with sickening clarity. All the lies, the manipulation, the abuse, it was all a twisted form of revenge, a way to punish me for seeing through her facade. You're sick, Sadie. You need help, I whisper, backing away slowly. Sadie's eyes narrow, her gaze locking onto the laptop clutched to my chest. Give me the memory card, Meredith. Give it to me, and maybe I'll let you live. But I'm done being her victim, her pawn. I've spent too long letting her control me, letting her poison my family. In one swift motion, I yank the memory card from the laptop and shove it down my shirt, into my bra. Sadie shrieks with fury, launching herself at me like a rabid animal. We grapple on the floor, a tangle of clawing fingers and flying fists. Sadie is younger, stronger, fueled by a manic rage. But I have something she doesn't, a mother's love, a grandmother's fierce determination to protect her own. I manage to grab a heavy paperweight from the desk, slamming it against Sadie's temple with all my might. She crumples to the ground, blood trickling from the gash on her head. For a moment I'm frozen, staring at her unconscious form in shock. Then, with trembling fingers, I reach for my phone and dial 911. I need the police, right away. I have evidence of a crime. Please hurry. As sirens wail in the distance, I slump against the wall, my heart racing. I know the battle is far from over, but for the first time in years, I feel a flicker of hope. Sadie's reign of terror ends today. I'll make sure of it. The memory card feels like a lead weight against my chest as I watch Sadie's unconscious form, waiting for the police to arrive. Part of me is tempted to flee, to take the evidence and run. But I know I can't do that. I have to see this through, for Avery's sake. With shaking hands, I retrieve my phone and start recording. If Sadie wakes up, I need her confession on tape. I need irrefutable proof of her crimes. Minutes tick by, each one feeling like an eternity. Just as I'm about to give up hope, Sadie stirs, groaning as she clutches her bleeding head. You fucking bitch, she hisses, struggling to sit up. You're going to pay for that. I keep the camera trained on her, my voice steady despite the fear coursing through my veins. It's over, Sadie. The police are on their way. They'll see the videos of you coaching Avery to lie. They'll know what you did. Sadie's eyes widen, then narrow into slits. You think you're so clever, don't you? Playing the victim, the concerned grandmother. But you're just as twisted as I am, Meredith. You're the one who turned your own sons against each other. You're the one who couldn't let go, couldn't accept that Jack chose me over you. I flinch at her words, the grain of truth in them stinging like salt in a wound. I may have made mistakes, Sadie, but I never abused a child. I never manipulated and lied and cheated like you. Sadie lets out a harsh bark of laughter. Oh, but you did. You lied to yourself every single day. You pretended to be this perfect, loving mother, when in reality, you were just a pathetic old woman desperate for attention. She staggers to her feet, her face twisted into a grotesque mask of hatred. You want my confession? Fine. I did it. I coached Avery to say Jack abused her. I siphoned money from his company. I fucked his brother. And I'd do it all again just to see the look on your face when you realized you'd lost everything. Nausea churns in my gut at the sheer depravity of her words. Why, Sadie? Why go to such lengths to destroy my family? Sadie's lips curl into a sneer. Because I could. Because it was easy. Because none of you ever saw me coming. She takes a step forward, her eyes glinting with a manic light. And now I'm going to make sure you never tell anyone what you know. Fear lances through me as Sadie lunges, her hands outstretched like claws. I dodge to the side, but not fast enough. She catches me by the hair, yanking me backwards. We tumble to the ground, my phone skittering out of reach. Sadie straddles my chest, her fingers wrapping around my throat. You should have minded your own business, you meddling cunt, she snarls, tightening her grip. Black spots dance across my vision as I gasp for air. I claw at Sadie's hands, but she's too strong, too fueled by rage and desperation. Just as I'm about to black out, the door bursts open. Sadie's weight is suddenly gone, replaced by blessed oxygen flooding my lungs. Through blurry eyes, I see Jack hauling Sadie off me, his face a mask of fury. Get off her, you psychotic bitch! Sadie shrieks and thrashes in his grip, spitting curses. I'll kill you! I'll kill all of you! But Jack doesn't let go. He wrestles her to the ground, pinning her arms behind her back. It's over, Sadie. I know everything. I heard your confession. The police are on their way, he says, his voice shaking with emotion. Sadie goes limp, her fight draining away as the reality of her situation sinks in. You set me up. You knew I'd come here. Jack nods, his jaw tight. I've been onto you for months, Sadie. I just needed proof. And thanks to my mother, now I have it. He looks up at me, his eyes shining with tears. I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm sorry I didn't believe you. I'm sorry I let her tear our family apart. Sobs rack my chest as I crawl towards my son, my baby boy. He gathers me into his arms, holding me tight as the sound of sirens fills the air. It's okay, Mom. It's over now. She can't hurt us anymore. And for the first time in years, I believe him. The aftermath of Sadie's arrest is a whirlwind of police statements, media scrutiny, and legal proceedings. Through it all, Jack remains by my side, a steadfast presence as we navigate the fallout of his wife's betrayal. I'm so sorry, Mom, he says for the 100th time, his eyes haunted by guilt and regret. I should have listened to you from the start. I should have seen through her lies. I squeeze his hand, offering what comfort I can. You couldn't have known, Jack. Sadie fooled us all. The important thing is that we're together now, and Avery is safe. At the mention of his daughter, Jack's face crumples. I failed her, Mom. I failed my own child. What kind of father am I? The kind who loves his daughter enough to admit his mistakes and fight for her, I say firmly. Avery is lucky to have you, Jack. Don't ever doubt that. As the days turn into weeks, the true extent of Sadie's crimes comes to light. The police uncover a trail of fraud, embezzlement, and blackmail stretching back years. It seems Sadie had been planning her revenge long before she ever met Jack. And then there's Liam, my other son, the one I thought had betrayed me along with Sadie. When he finally comes to see me, his face is etched with shame and remorse. I'm sorry, Mom, he whispers, his voice choked with tears. I never meant for any of this to happen. Sadie, she had something on me, something I couldn't let Jack find out about. My heart aches for my broken, misguided boy. What did she have on you, Liam? He takes a shuddering breath, avoiding my gaze. I embezzled money from Jack's company years ago. I was in debt, and I didn't know what else to do. Sadie found out, and she used it to blackmail me into helping her. Anger and disappointment war with the overwhelming love I feel for my son. Oh, Liam, why didn't you come to me? To Jack, we would have helped you. Liam shakes his head, his shoulders slumped in defeat. I was too ashamed. I thought I could handle it on my own, but Sadie, she's a master manipulator. She made me believe that I had no choice but to do what she said. I pull my son into my arms, holding him tight as he sobs against my shoulder. It's okay, Liam. We'll get through this together, as a family. And we do. Jack files for divorce and sole custody of Avery, using Sadie's confession and the evidence from the memory card to prove her unfit as a mother. Liam turns himself in for his role in the embezzlement, ready to face the consequences of his actions. Through it all, Avery remains our shining light, our reason to keep going. With Sadie behind bars, Jack and I work together to give her the stable, loving home she deserves. I love you, Grandma, she whispers one night as I tuck her into bed, her little arms wrapped around my neck. Tears sting my eyes as I hug her close, marveling at the resilience of this brave, beautiful child. I love you too, sweetheart, more than anything in this world. As I watch her drift off to sleep, I feel a sense of peace wash over me. For so long I'd been consumed by anger and bitterness, by the need for revenge against the woman who'd stolen my family. But now, with Sadie gone and my sons by my side, I realize that the only thing that truly matters is the love we have for each other. We may be broken, but we're not beyond repair. With time, patience, and the unshakable bond of family, I know we'll heal. We'll find our way back to each other, stronger than ever before. And that, in the end, is the sweetest revenge of all. 5 years have passed since Sadie's arrest, and life has settled into a new normal. Jack and Avery moved in with me after the divorce, and together we've built a home filled with love, laughter, and healing. Avery, now a precocious 10-year-old, has blossomed under our care. Gone is the timid, frightened child she once was, replaced by a confident, vibrant girl who lights up every room she enters. Today, as we celebrate Avery's birthday, I can't help but marvel at how far we've come. The backyard is filled with balloons and streamers, the air thick with the scent of barbecue and the sound of children's laughter. Jack catches my eye from across the lawn, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. He looks lighter, unburdened by the weight of Sadie's betrayal. In the years since the divorce, he's thrown himself into being the best father he can be, determined to make up for lost time. As I watch him scoop Avery into his arms, spinning her around until she shrieks with glee, my heart swells with pride and gratitude. My son, my brave, resilient boy, has come so far. And then there's Liam, the prodigal son returned. After serving his time for embezzlement, he's worked hard to earn back our trust, to prove himself worthy of a second chance. It hasn't been easy, but slowly, surely, we've welcomed him back into the fold. Avery adores her Uncle Liam, and he dotes on her in return, showering her with affection and attention. As the party winds down and the guests start to leave, Avery bounds over to me, her face flushed with excitement. "Grandma, can I ask you something?" I smile, pulling her onto my lap. "Of course, sweetheart, what is it?" Avery fidgets, suddenly shy. I was wondering, would it be okay if I called you Mom? Tears spring to my eyes at the unexpected request. "Oh, Avery, are you sure that's what you want?" She nods, her little face solemn. "You've always been like a mom to me, Grandma. You take care of me, and you love me, just like a real mom should. And I love you too." I hug her close, my heart bursting with emotion. "I would be honored to be your mom, Avery. I love you more than anything in this world." Jack, who's been listening nearby, comes over to join us, his own eyes suspiciously bright. "I think that's a wonderful idea, Avery, and I know it's what your grandpa would have wanted too." We sit there for a long moment, holding each other tight, basking in the warmth of our little family. It's not the family I ever expected to have, but it's the one I cherish with every fiber of my being. Later that night, as I tuck Avery into bed, she looks up at me with sleepy eyes. "Mom, can you tell me a story about Grandpa?" I settle beside her, stroking her hair as I begin to speak. "Your grandpa was the kindest, most loving man I ever knew. He would have adored you, Avery, just like I do." As I spin tales of Tom's gentle heart and quirky sense of humor, I feel his presence all around us, watching over our little family with pride and love. We've been through so much, endured so many trials and heartaches, but we've emerged stronger, more united than ever before. Sadie tried to destroy us, to tear us apart with her lies and manipulations, but in the end, she only brought us closer together, forging an unbreakable bond that will last a lifetime. As I look around at my son, my granddaughter, and the home we've built together, I know that this is what true happiness feels like. This is what it means to be a family. And no matter what the future holds, no matter what challenges we may face, I know that we'll face them together. Always.